Whack sex can be improved. Whack niggas can't. This is Bedtime Stories, Grownup Edition, Genesis, Part 12. When we left off, there were multiple offensive and defensive operations. In New York, Star was meeting with the Haitians. They shared information and provided her with the tools that she would need to get them the information that they would need to completely obliterate the Cato organization. In Texas, Michael was prepared for the school dinner dance, and Sincere and Natalia were ready for their second date. In unison, two caravans left the family complex in Denton, one from the main entrance and one from a well-hidden side entrance. When the caravan that left the front entrance made it to the main road, they immediately picked up a tail. Just as they'd been expecting, someone had been surveilling the property, and with all of the side roads owned by the family, the closest they could get was the main road. This fact was radioed to the leaders of all of the security teams. The generals in charge of the security for each family notified the heads of those families. And when Waz got the message, he promptly informed his mother, Mrs. Ali, that she would not be meeting Miss Bernie and Liza at the Blues Lounge at 8:30. And Mrs. Ali had no issue with that. She was more concerned with her safety. So she decided that she'd let Bernie know after she finished her dinner with Liza. Meanwhile, the caravan that left from the secure hidden side entrance of the complex verified that they did not have a tail, hit a few shortcuts, hit the highway, and made their way to the Trinidadian restaurant. The caravan that left the front entrance and had picked up a tail took the long way. By the time they got to the Trinidadian restaurant, Sincere was already inside, and so was Natalia. So the tail had been duped. They'd followed the caravan to the restaurant, assuming that somebody from the family was in it. And just as planned, the decoy pulled up. She parked in the restaurant's side parking lot, and dressed like $1,000,000, she walked around the restaurant and walked right into the front door. As Natalia and Sincere sat down for dinner, they exchanged pleasantries, and then Natalia said, "So what exactly is going on here?" Sincere said, "What you mean?" Natalia said, "I'm assuming you know why my security plan had to be changed for our date." Sincere said, "I don't know if I'm supposed to tell you all that." Natalia said, "If you don't want this date to end, you're going to tell me all of that." So Sincere relented. He told Natalia that one of the caravans of security had been tailed to the restaurant, that there was a covert operative somewhere in the restaurant who looked a whole lot like her, who was going to lead the tail to a safe house where they'd be under attack. And when Natalia asked, "So is this decoy with the Lopez family?" Sincere said, "Yeah, why?" And Natalia just smiled. She said, "I think I know who the decoy is, but unfortunately, I'm not at liberty to say." Sincere said, "So you got me telling you everything, but you're not going to tell me nothing?" Natalia said, "You should know that covert operatives' identities are kept strictly confidential. Not even their family members know that they're covert operatives, even if their family members are a part of the life. I don't want to tell you something that I don't know for sure. And if my guess is right, I'm not outing her." Sincere said, "That's real ish. I feel that. Now, you know a whole lot about my family. I don't know a whole lot about yours. It seems like your connection to the Lopezes is being kept hush-hush. If we're going to date and get to know each other, you don't think I should know something?" Natalia said, "If we decide to go from dating to exclusivity, then you'll have an opportunity to meet my immediate family for yourself, and most of your questions will be answered. You'll need my father's permission to make this thing official." Sincere said, "So it's your father." To that point, he knew that Natalia was connected, that somebody in her family had to be big time. But no one, not Angela or Catherine or even Q, had specifically said it was her father or what his role was in the Lopez organization. Natalia just chuckled and said, "I know my role, and I play it well." As the dinner continued, they talked about everything from their childhoods to their college experiences. And when Natalia asked Sincere what he thought a relationship would look like with him in a position of power in the St. James family, Sincere said, "Look, I'm a level with you. I'm in the running to claim my father's seat at the table. Part of my training includes some assignments that I need to complete. I'm leaving Texas on Monday, and I won't be back for about 2 months. After that, it's going to be intense training. My stepmother has told me to expect the training to last for like 2 more years. On top of all of that, we're in the middle of a war. So right now, I'm just going with the flow. A lot has to happen in my life in 2 years. Part of that is what we're doing right now. I'm trying my best to be a patient man, and I don't really know how to do this. That means I'm going to need you to be patient with me. I'm not going to get it right all the time. But if we're going to do this, I got to have some kind of way to get in contact with you. I don't know where I'm going to be when I finish these 2 assignments. I don't know how soon I'm going to be able to get back to Texas. I got to go where the job takes me. and I need somebody that could ride with that. Natalia said, so you're thinking a long-distance relationship? I don't know that that's the best way to get to know one another and fully ascertain whether we're really compatible. There are things that you just can't know about somebody without actually spending time with them. And we're not going to get on the phone and talk about our days. I might be able to tell you what I'm doing at Vibrantly You, but you're not going to be able to tell me what you're doing. Sincere said, I thought about that, and you like to read. Everybody has downtime, even in this life. So how about you pick a book, one you haven't read, and we read it together, a chapter at a time. You come up with questions, I come up with questions, and we discuss the chapter, answer the questions, sharing our thoughts about the book, the plot, the characters. We'll learn more, Natalia said, about how one another thinks, how we see ourselves juxtaposed to the characters, how the plot aligns with our lives. Sincere said, exactly. Natalia said, you came up with that all by yourself? Sincere chuckled and said, I had a little help. I took your advice. I talked to the men in my life. They gave me the game. Natalia said, the game? This is not a game. Sincere said, nah, that ain't what I mean. I mean, they told me how important it is and helped me to see how valuable it is to know more about a woman than what she looked like and what her favorite designers are. Natalia said, I'm glad to hear that. So we do the book thing. We connect when we can. And we see how it goes. Sincere said, yeah. And I was hoping maybe we can get up again tomorrow or Sunday. I want to see you again before I leave. Maybe we can connect in a less formal environment. Natalia said, I'm sorry, I have plans tomorrow, and I'll be spending time with family on Sunday. Natalia's mother, Eugenia, will be flying into Texas from Puerto Rico Saturday. On Sunday, she had plans to go to church, out to eat, and spend some much-needed quality time with her mother and sister, who just so happened to have said she'd be in town, too. Natalia would be temporarily relocated to a house owned by the Lopez family until the situation with the trafficking organization settled down. She'd be working from home for the foreseeable future, and her mother was being moved from Puerto Rico because her father was in the thick of things. He'd been assigned to Corey and Stephanie's security team, and things between Corey and his staff over at his new church were heating up, making it much more likely that the traffickers would find an end, putting Corey, Stephanie, and baby Kari in danger. So when Natalia said that she had plans for Saturday and would be spending much-needed time with her family on Sunday, Sincere decided to push the envelope. He said, you was real clear about your plans for Sunday, but you was real vague about tomorrow. Natalia chuckled and said, you was real vague about your assignments. Sincere said, that's different. That's work. Natalia said, and you are not my man, so you won't be privy to my every movement and plan. Not to mention the only thing I said about Sunday was that I would be spending time with my family. I didn't lay out my itinerary. Sincere said, look, if I got competition, I just want to know that. Natalia said, we all have competition. Ourselves, the best and worst versions of who we are in constant competition. And the only person who can keep us from what we desire is us. Now, if your question is whether I'm seeing other people, I am, because I can. And I'm sure you are too. Sincere said, but I'm not pursuing nobody. Natalia asked, is there someone, somewhere out there in this world who has a reasonable expectation that she's going to see you, hear from you, sleep with you? Sincere said, that shouldn't matter because we're just getting to know one another. And I'm not sleeping with you yet. So we clear? I got friends. That's all. Natalia said, so do I, but I don't sleep with my friends. Sincere said, so what you want? You want me to be celibate? Natalia said, of course not. But if you want me to take you seriously, then abstinence is probably your best bet. Sincere said, what's the difference? Natalia said, words matter. They mean what they mean. Someone who's celibate plans to never engage in sexual activities. That certainly wouldn't work. Then they both dissolved into laughter. And Natalia said, someone who's abstaining is waiting for something specific to occur. And you can abstain from just about anything. Alcohol, red meat, sex. So, to be clear, I would prefer that a man who's serious about getting to know me for the purposes of a long-term relationship abstain from all sexual activity with all other parties. Sincere said, yeah, shorty, you asking for a lot. But why you ain't just say abstain from sexual activity with other women? Natalia said, I don't know you. I don't know what you into. Sincere said, oh, hell no. I don't get down like that. It's women or nothing. Natalia said, now don't protest too much. You know what they say. Sincere said, please tell me you joking. Natalia said, I'm not. I always try to create an environment where a man can be honest with me about his proclivities. Because I don't want to be the last one to know that he goes both ways. Sincere said, well, I don't. And I promise, you let me show you, and you'll know for sure. Natalia said, slow down there, big fella. You want to show me something? Show me that you can control yourself, that you can master your own body and mind. Sincere said, so you telling me that you abstaining while you get to know me? Natalia said, no, I'm telling you that I'm abstaining until I'm in a long-term committed relationship. And if I was sexually involved with someone else, I wouldn't be getting to know you. Sincere said, well, let me ask you this. What if you spend all this time getting to know a nigga, and when it's time, he can't perform? What if he got ED or something? Or he got a Mike and Ike in his pants? Or he just don't know what he doing and he can't fulfill you? Natalia said, whack sex can be improved. Whack niggas can't. And Sincere fell out laughing. He said, your personality, your sense of humor, A1. Natalia said, your willingness to learn and grow, A1. When the date had concluded, they'd exchanged secure phone numbers. Sincere walked Natalia to the back parking lot where her driver was waiting and said, the best way that we could end this date, though, is for you to let me kiss them luscious lips. Natalia said, maybe next time, and walked away. Then Sincere headed back inside the restaurant. When security directed him to the doppelganger, he was almost floored. The woman waiting in the private room was almost identical to Natalia. They had to be related. When he said, damn, you look just like her, the woman just said, of course I do. Play your role. Walk me outside and make it look good. So Sincere walked the covert operative to the identical BMW that was parked in the restaurant's parking lot, opened her car door, and was completely thrown off when she turned to him, grabbed him by his shirt, pulled him down, and laid a kiss on him that almost had his head swimming. He'd gotten a kiss at the end of the date that he wanted, just not from the woman that he'd asked for it. She got in the car and drove off, and Sincere made a beeline for the restaurant. As she drove off, the men who were surveying the area immediately followed. They thought she was the same woman that they'd seen him with at the ice cream parlor, and it was obvious that she was the woman he'd met at that restaurant. They didn't have enough vehicles to follow him and her, and seeing the kiss, they figured she was going to be their best bet at getting at Sincere. So they followed her, and she left them. Meanwhile, Michael and his date Tamara were on their way to the dinner dance. They'd missed the dinner portion because Q and Angela had escorted Michael to Tamara's house to pick her up. As Michael waited at the bottom of the staircase, Tamara made her grand entrance. And like the teenage boy that he was, Michael's mouth was wide open and so were his eyes. Lost for words, he deferred to a phrase that he newly learned in his Mandarin class, a class that he shared with Tamara. He said, tell me W Ching. Tamara chuckled and his father slapped him in the back of the head because he knew exactly what that meant. Thankfully, Angela and her parents did not. He put the corsage on her wrist, and then Q handed him the bouquet of calla lilies that he purchased. He promptly presented them to Tamara's mother, who said, "Aw, aren't you a gentleman? I thought these were for Tamara." Michael said, "Thank you, ma'am, sir, for allowing me to escort your beautiful daughter to the 10th grade spring dance." And Tamara's father said, "My pleasure. You two be on your best behavior, though." Michael said, "Yes, sir. You have my word." Angela had already discussed the plans with Tamara's mother. They'd be heading back to the complex, taking photos in the garden, and the three couples, his parents, her parents, and the teenagers, would enjoy a delicious dinner prepared by the grandmother crew. Tamara's parents would be escorted home, and the teenagers would be transported to the dance. Angela had provided them with a well-crafted story about Q's role in the FBI and the need for security. Tamara's home had been under surveillance, and the security team had not identified anybody else lurking around. When Angela, Q, and Michael headed to Tamara's house, they'd used one of the secure private hidden exits. So anyone who might have been lurking at the main entrance was severely confused when the caravan returned. And after photos and a pleasant dinner, Tamara's parents exited out of the main entrance, and a caravan of security did everything they needed to do to ensure that there was not a tail. Meanwhile, Tamara and Michael left out of one of the hidden exits. On the way, Michael said, "Tamara, I don't want you to be worried. There's nothing to worry about. But I do need you to know that my father's in the middle of a very important investigation, and that's why I've been transferred to homeschool. He made an exception for us to go to the dance. So I'm going to do everything in my power to make sure we have the best time ever. But we got to be on guard for anything and anybody that don't look right. Don't eat or drink anything unless I give it to you. And don't leave the dance without me." Tamara said, "I got you. Let me find out you're going to keep me safe." Michael said, "Hell yeah." Tamara said, "Well, there might be something in it for you if you do a good job." And Michael's pants got tight. He said, "It's going to be a bunch of security there. Some is going to be obvious and some ain't. But I'm going to find a way for us to get some time alone." Clearly, Michael had forgotten all about his mother's speech back at home. Angela had brought the leftover food back to her and Q's. She called the children down and said, "Come on down, kids. It's time for y'all to eat." And when only Angel, Isla, and V came, Angela said to Angel, "Where's Melissa?" Angel said, "She's in her room. She said she's not hungry." Angela just looked at Q. Melissa was pissed. She begged and pleaded with her parents not to let Michael go to this dance. She'd had a premonition something was going to go down, and she was worried about Michael and Tamara. She said, "You're making a huge mistake. This is a bad idea. Why won't anybody listen to me? You know that I know what I'm talking about." Q said, "Baby girl, we listening. We hear you. We're doing everything we need to ensure that your brother and his date are safe. Instead of fussing and worrying, just pray. Trust God." Melissa said, I did." Meanwhile, over at the school, the dance was in full effect. Michael and Tamara were having a ball. When their table mates asked why they didn't attend the dinner, Tamara bragged about the lavish estate where Michael lived, the photo shoot, and the bomb Trinidadian food that his grandmothers had prepared. The Queen Mother, Mom Brenda, and Mom Joyce had thrown down in the kitchen. Their friends went from being mad that they didn't join them for dinner to jealous that they didn't get an invite. Tamara's friend said, "I know them pictures gonna be bomb because you look good as hell in that dress." Tamara was in a form-fitting emerald green dress, and as Angela predicted, she had all her assets on display. The young girl was stacked, and all the boys in attendance at the dance were hurting themselves, trying to keep their eyes off Michael's girl. There were only a handful of black children at the exclusive public school, and everywhere Michael and Tamara went, so did they. That made it even easier for the hidden security to keep them in their line of vision. But Michael knew exactly where security was positioned, and he'd already made a plan to duck them. He knew how serious this situation was, but he was even more serious about seeing what Tamara had in mind when she said that she had something for him. He enlisted the help of his friends. He said, "Y'all stay together, clustered over here. Don't move till we come back." And then he and Tamara slipped out of a back door and made a beeline for a staircase. Michael knew that at the top of that staircase was more security, but as long as they stayed to the shadows and kept quiet, they would be none the wiser. At the same time, Liza and Miss Bernie had just finished dinner. Liza had received a phone call that there was an alarm going off at the warehouse connected to Vibrantly You, just as she pulled up outside of the Blues Lounge. Liza said, "It's too late to cancel on Nadira. She's got to be on her way. You go ahead inside. I'll head over to Vibrantly You, and I'll come back over here as soon as possible." Miss Bernie said, "All right, baby. Well, be safe. See you soon." The two ladies kissed. Miss Bernie got out of the car and went into the back door of the Blues Club. She let the hostess know that Liza would be back and she was expecting a guest named Nadira Ali. Then she headed over to her and Liza's usual booth. She ordered her usual drink, and when it came, she downed that joint and ordered another one. She started feeling that drink almost immediately. Something wasn't right. Her head was swimming, and as she looked up at the sheer and opaque curtains at the front of the booth, she saw a woman coming in carrying the second drink. But it wasn't the waitress. It wasn't Liza or Nadira either. The woman was smiling, and Miss Bernie thought to herself, "Damn, she fine." Right before she lost consciousness. And in Miami, it was go time. Razor's birthday surprise had gone off without a hitch. Simone had actually pulled it off. And as each of the three women that Razor had cheated on Simone with walked into the party, Razor started looking more and more nervous. Simone acted like she had no clue who those women were. And just as the slideshow started and everyone had eyes on the screen, Simone whispered in Razor's ear, "That heifer looks like the nape of her neck smells like backshot air," pointing at one of the women Razor had cheated on her with. Then she looked at the second one and said, "And that one looks like somebody glanced at her and then drew her from memory." Then she pointed to the third one and said, "And that one, she looked like a stretched out diabetes compression sock. You got the baddest broad in the room. And you thought it was a good idea to cheat on me with three broads who look like who shot John and forgot to kill him? You gonna wish you never did." Before Razor could say a word, Simone slipped off. She went and wiped all her makeup off. And when she came back in the room, the slideshow was on the most important part, the pictures and videos of Razor at her worst. Calamity had already broken out. The three women that Razor had cheated on her with had already seen the pictures, text messages, and emails that provided proof of Razor's infidelity. And they'd already put two and two together, that Simone was not Razor's best friend. She was supposed to be her girlfriend, and they were side chicks. So while they were going off on Razor, everyone else was enjoying the slideshow. The lights came on in the room just in time for everyone to see Simone standing in the front of the room, makeup gone, face bare, bruises and tinted window on full display. She said, "Love is not supposed to hurt."